All right, I can read the statements. So if you're ready, I'm ready.
Does Commissioner Tunnicliffe have a quorum of his committee?
Let me look.
I don't think so.
How many does he need? He's got 3. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Which one?
this is either one. This is Jamie. I do not have everyone signed in on open meeting.
Okay. If you hear that, please sign in to open meeting. And let us know if anyone who's showing mine is up.
Yeah, who are you missing? Because sometimes you'll jump in too early and I'll get dropped off.
I am missing Keith Hudson. I did speak to him, and he's probably going to be on the call. And I have not heard from Robbie Beal yet. I don't have him on there, but I know Betsy Hester is not going to be joining us. So I'm still just waiting for 2. But besides that, I just now got everyone else.
Who's missing from open?
Okay. I call the Combined Budget Education Committee to order for April 6, 2021. I'll read the statement from the governor. This means being held pursuant to Executive Order number 78 from the governor of the state of Tennessee. As such, all members of both the Budget and Education Committees must be able to hear the committee chair of each committee and each other. If you cannot hear other committee members, please notify immediately. Without objection, the Budget Committee and the Education Committee hereby determine that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of COVID-19 outbreak. This meeting is available on public access TV and is streaming live on YouTube. Commissioner Tone, if you don't mind, I will ask the Jamie to do the roll call for budget, and then if you'll do the same for education, we'll get rolling.
Yes, sir.
I'm showing all members of the Budget Committee are present.
And all Education Committee members, please log in if you have not. I am showing Keith Hudson, Robbie Beal, and Betsy Hester is absent. Present Chad Story, Matt Williams, Brian Bethard, and Tom Tunnicliffe.
All right. Jamie, you've recorded that. Thank you. There we go. Commissioner Tunnicliffe, since this is education and you've been through this before, I thought I might let you go ahead and start, and then we will jump in as we have questions. And then we will also make the motion to put these items on the floor.
Mr. Commissioner Webb, I would be happy to let you lead that because I have left my notebook elsewhere right now.
Oh, okay. Well, this was a little bit different. And so what we're going to do today is look at the 3 versions, 3 funds, the education, the cafeteria, what's the last one? I always get that confused, the SAC thing, the extended school program. And so I think we have to do this like we've done the others. Is that correct, Mosley? We listen to the school and then put this on the floor. We do this one differently. Is someone legal on the line that can give us some advice, Bobby or?
Commissioner Webb, I'm
Yes,
not
sir.
an attorney, obviously, but I think what you need to do is just turn the meeting over to Director Golden and let him present the budget, and you all ask questions as you go along. I don't know that you all were prepared to take any action tonight, but you're certainly welcome to do so if you're so inclined. But I think Director Golden and Budget Director Ms. Farmer would just present the budget to you all.
That sounds very good. Thank you, Diane, for bringing that in. And so, Mr. Golden, if you will go over your budget for the 2021-2022 budget year, we will be listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Diane. And I also want to thank those of you, those commissioners who've asked us questions about our budget. I know we were able to give you an electronic copy at least a few days ago for you to review. I do want to refer you first to the April 6th, 2021 memo that's from Rachel Farmer and me, and it gives a synopsis of where we are with the budget. And really has kind of the bottom line numbers. Our board voted on our budgets at their March meeting, and the next step is, of course, for us to present our budgets to you. I do want to mention one particular item in the memo before I turn it over to Rachel to walk through that detail, and that is the proposal from the Purchasing and Insurance Committee for $600 per employee or per full-time equivalent increase for expenditures for benefits. That P&I meeting with that recommendation came the day after our board meeting for a vote. So I anticipate, based on my discussions with the mayor, that we will likely bring that back to our board prior to the July commission vote. And so I know that you all have some discussion about that in a broader sense than just the school budget, because that is a impact and a recommendation, as I understand it, from P&I for everyone, not just us. I'm also going to hit our student numbers and then turn it over to Rachel Farmer to give you some detail of the actual budget numbers. The last bullet on the bottom of that first page of the memo is what I'm referring to. We are projecting end of first month enrollment for this coming year, fall of 2021, which would basically be the day after Labor Day, effectively the day after Labor Day, of 40,397. Our number for our current number, to give you a comparison, to give you an apples to apples comparison, as of March 26th, which was a little over a week ago, was 39,912. So we're projecting an increase from year to year of 1,016 K-12, but from now forward, an increase of about 485. We had some anomalies, some significant changes because of COVID. Number one was we did have a reduction in student enrollment this past year. And that's a commonality in public schools. What I've heard, generally speaking, largely because of the unsurety of whether schools would be on campus back in the fall, along with concern over the safety protocols, either concerned that the safety protocols weren't going to be enough, or concerned that their children didn't, the families didn't want their children to go through it. Just a wide variety of thoughts on that. Over the course of this school year, we've had about 2/3 of that reduction return to our campus over the from the time the fall hit to about now. And so that's the anomaly I'm referring to, that we've had a larger increase from the beginning of first month than normal. But again, it's an offset of the reduction that we experienced. Also, that particular point with the end of first month, for budgeting purposes, we talk about K-12 enrollment. We also have the pre-K program and our early childhood program, which is students ages 3 and 4 with disabilities plus peers that we have in that particular bullet point. So our total enrollment, we project out at 41,210. But again, when we go through the budget process, we talk about K-12 largely. So I wanted to point out that key point to you, which drives our numbers. One final thing related to that before I ask Rachel to go through the bottom line numbers for you is that when we saw that there was a reduction in our student numbers, we made sure we did not hire a number of teacher positions that you all had approved in our budget. So those unhired positions, the funding from those unhired positions went to fund balance. So that's part of what Rachel work through in working on the revenue side of the budget. More specifically, on page 9 of the budget document we gave you, and you may notice there's two numbers. I'm referring to the bottom right number, which is a total compilation for the entire document, is our position control report. You can see at the very top entry on page 9, the numerical evidence of what I just said about us not hiring teachers. Regular instruction, we had in the comments section in the top right, as an example, for elementary teachers, 34.05 positions were not filled last year. As a result of numbers, and you can see those references for high school as well. So that's the short version on the student number side and on the teacher staffing side. But I would like to turn it over to Rachel Farmer to give you that overview and put some words from her mouth to the memo that she prepared. Rachel.
Thank you, commissioners. I'm glad to get to present this budget to you this year. And I think what we'll do is just kind of go through the memo and touch the high points there, and then we'll go from there. As we have this discussion, I know the questions have come up about comparing to last year. We just want to keep in mind that when we prepared the budget last year, we were asked to take it back to the 18-19 numbers. And so comparing for this year, we're proposing a $119,851 million budget. And so if you compare it to last year's, the original budget, that is $16,194,082 over the prior, but through the budget amendments that we've had to come back and do, we're really only $4,903,080 over where we are currently, which is a 1.2% increase. Over $2.8 million of this adjustments that we've made this year with our budget. Part of that was bus purchases, which we brought to you a couple of months ago. We did have an increase of about $530,000 for specifically targeting special needs students. We did have $3 million in grants come in, and then the state did fund a portion. Well, they funded a BEP, what they called a bonus, and so that was $2.6 million. All of those funds came in. We had to come back for those budget resolutions, and so that's where the differences are. As we start looking into this next budget, we do know that, as Mr. Golden already said, 736 teachers and educators and nurses are not funded by that BEP formula. We know, based on discussions that we've had with the comptroller's office, that for next year we should be held harmless. And so what that means as related to the BEP formula is that the money that we received this year is our base BEP money. Even though our student numbers went down, they are not going to drop that money. We will receive the same amount, and this budget reflects that we are holding steady instead of showing growth, which we normally do have. Traditionally, we've received about $4 million in growth each year over the last couple of years, and we will not receive that this year, and so therefore we also did not budget it for next year because we just don't have the numbers at this point to back that up. As far as sales tax go, we were conservative on our numbers, I'm sure, but in talking with the mayor and with Nina, we'll get closer as May and June comes in and can get those numbers more down to real. Again, this is just a projection. That's what our budget is. And so we know we will be getting additional information throughout the rest of the year in order to be able to get those numbers to be more exact. When we projected the penny, we used the number that we were given for February 3rd in our projections. We also are fully aware, just like you've talked many times, that this is our reassessment year, and so we'll see. We'll see. We know all those things are coming, but we don't have numbers yet, and you guys don't either, and we know that. The ADA number adjustment, we do not have. We've requested it from the state and we've not been given that number yet. And so we also don't have any adjustment related to it. Things to think about as far as this budget and why it's more. We did have the classified role, which is just whenever through normal process as people move up and gain experience, they roll up on our pay charts. And so that's included. Mr. Golden already mentioned that we found out about the $600 insurance increase. That is not included in this budget. You will not see that number because we presented it to the board the day before the other committee meeting. And so that's what we do plan to come back to our board, present that change, and then we will have it back to you when we do the second, hopefully the second read before you approve our budget. And so that information will be in there. We also did include, based on advisement from you all, to go ahead and count on a 4% raise in our calculations. And so that was roughly $8.5 million of our increase is related to that 4% raise. When we do have the roles for experience, some may be more or less than the 4%. The max anyone will get this year is 4%. We did have accounted for that. Mr. Golden already talked to you about our numbers. So I won't necessarily go back over that again, but I guess the good thing is that we may have dropped, but we are coming back up, and we're very hopeful that that is the trend. You see the growth in Williamson County has not really stopped a whole lot, and so we anticipate continued growth again. After our general purpose budget, we have two other budgets presented to you. One's the Central Cafeteria Fund that's requesting $14,068,454, and then our Extended School Program Fund budget of $4,939,162. And we can cover those after you have questions. Reminding you, the capital budget you will also have in your second round. We pushed it back further because we were trying to get closer to real numbers and what the real needs are going to be. And so that's not presented within this tonight, but it will be coming in your second round. Do we have any questions, anything we need to discuss about anything I've said so far?
Commissioner Herbert.
I've got a lot of questions. Are y'all ready? Do you want me to do them now? Wait.
Yes, ma'am. Your audio was iffy, but we're ready.
Okay. I got the thing on the student enrollment projections. Can you please send me one? I've asked for before and haven't gotten it, that has the capacity on it of the schools.
Yes, ma'am. We can see capacity, and that should have been on there. We actually have that on our website as well, but I'll make sure that we send you all the school capacities.
I know, because it's so many years and it's so little bitty, it's a hard reading it too.
Sure.
Then I guess my next thing is, how many online students do you have this year that's doing online only?
So this year we have about 5,500 this semester doing online. We were a little over 8,000 first semester, dropped to about 5,500. Right now, we've gone through the re-enrollment process, and we project about 1,200 online for this coming year.
Okay, but those are in these numbers, your online people, right?
Online are in our total enrollment. Yes, they are. They are still part of our student population.
Okay, now I'm going to get down to the nitty gritty. And it goes back to the fact that we have less students than we did from 2 years ago. I noticed on special ed, you had 5.5 additional speech pathologists. Is that because of the problems with the special ed students that we have now? Or
Yes, ma'am. That it is. Those, and I will tell you, I see three major, more significant increases over the past budget. One is the special ed staffing. 2 is online, and then 3 is the proposed raise to parallel the county that Ms. Farmer referenced. So that specific example of speech pathologist is based on specific needs of students with disabilities and the mapping that our staff does based on those students whose IEPs call for that. That is a significant change. You've hit on that extra 5.5 positions. That is significant.
Okay, and then the next one is under student support services. You're asking for one curriculum specialist. What do they do?
That's again special education. The curriculum specialist is the position is designed to help special education teachers put curriculum together to actually serve those students with disabilities. We've noticed a gap in that work with our special education teachers being able to prepare curriculum that's accessible to the students. I will tell you, it's one specialist to help the whole district. We've argued that there's actually been a request for more, but what I want to do is see what kind of a difference that we can make in actually providing those services with just one position this year.
Okay, the next thing, an assistant director for CTE.
Yes, ma'am. That's career technical education. That is a proposed increase to staffing. What we have done as part of our strategic plan is put an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and math, the STEM programs. We've expanded our CTE offerings, and the volume of work is such that we do need some extra help in leading those career technical education programs. One of the items that our governor is focused on is that high tech, career tech, and we've done the same thing with our board in strategic plan. So, Ms. Herbert, that is a strategic plan item.
Are those positions at every high school, or is it just the one over at the old Columbia State Building?
Just one position, and so the Columbia State Building is what I think of as a very special career tech program, the Entrepreneurship Center, and that has a director position. But career tech governs all the career technical programs in every single high school, from agriculture to mechatronics to computer-aided design, the whole gamut of what we have. So that's one position for the whole district to help coordinate all those programs.
Okay, this is my one I'm really gonna fuss about. You have got 8.5 assistant principals added. Why do you need 8.5 assistant principals when you got less enrollment from 2 years ago?
That's a great question. So number one, and just make sure everybody knows where we are. We're in that position control report, which does cover frankly, about 80% of our total budget, because about 80% of our total budget is people. We have 2 items to hitting that assistant principal. Number one is our staffing standards at every individual school, and that's 1.5 of those 8.5 positions. The rest are 7 positions for online. Our proposal, given what we experienced this past year with online, is it's not going away. We went through a lot of pain creating that online program, and I know our board is aware of it because they heard from the families as we scrambled to put something together to serve those families, and you all may have heard some of it. Those 7 positions include online support for our new program in K-8 and high school. And you're right, that's significant. It's a lot of assistant principals. Managing the online program for us to do it right takes a lot. And just to be as blunt as I can, we weren't equipped for it this year, and it was a very painful situation. Strategically, it's not something that I would have brought to the board for last year or even this year had we not hit COVID. But now that it's here, now we've got the program together. What I told the board is we need to be able to staff appropriately so that we can actually do the work on this online program. It is more expensive per student, especially as we're getting this started up, because it is more complex.
What, if there's only gonna be 1,200 online students, why do you need 7 assistant principals for that?
Because of the detail of making sure that the quality of instruction is what we expect at WCS.
I do think that's, and you've got 4 secretaries.
Yes, ma'am.
It's less people, less students, that's what I understand.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yeah, but
where's the growth at if we've got less students?
I think I missed part of that question, but let me.
Oh, I see. Under secretaries, you have 4 for growth, but we have less students, so I don't understand what you need the 4 growth for. It's right, Mr. Principal.
4 growth, two for WCS online. We have learned that we need more help at the administrative offices. And I'm talking about at the school level. So our proposal does include that extra help. One of the critical pieces that COVID has really exposed for us is those pain points where we haven't been staffed sufficiently for the demands from our families. And so our staff has asked for that extra help at the front office level. So what we have proposed is based on our staffing ratios, because there are some individual schools that are growing and others that aren't, to increase it based on 4. They'll be assigned to specific schools. One oddity with what we're experiencing is we have to have a baseline of staffing at every school. And then we've structured it so when you have more students at a particular school, you staff more. So in the aggregate, sometimes the total numbers are more than what it looks like it ought to be, because individual schools have a greater need, but we still have to have that baseline staffing at schools that might have fewer students. And that's a product of that, plus 2 for online, 1 at K-8 and 1 at the high school.
Okay, next one, you've got the revenue. Can you send us, Leslie used to do a breakdown of where all the revenue for the schools came from, you know, from sales tax and liquor tax and everything. Can y'all do that again?
Yes, ma'am. And I think that may be on page 17 of the document Rachel provided to you. You want to make sure that's what you're talking about.
I don't see it. It's just, it's just got like taxes and permits. It's not really broken down. Like I'm talking about, like detailed, broken down.
Okay, we'll do what we can. And Rachel, give yourself a note to figure out that extra detail. We'll talk to Leslie. She helped prepare this budget, and get with Nina and see what extra breakdown we can have from those sources.
Okay, now I'm going to the budget. And I have a question. What, under regular instructions, you've got retire hybrid stabilization. What is that? 521700.
Rachel, if you can find that before me, please go ahead and answer that.
It's part of the retirement, and there is a hybrid plan now. There's different, you have legacy and hybrid as far as the retirement goes. And so that's the portion for teachers, and that's the portion that is in that hybrid plan.
Oh, I found that. Yeah, it's in the middle of page 18.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say, can I give a short version of that, Rachel? You tell me if I'm being factually accurate. The state has changed their retirement plan, and more experienced teachers with more years are grandfathered into the old plan. But there's a new plan that, in my opinion, is designed to minimize the state expense, and it transfers some of that expense to the schools. Is that a fair characterization?
Very fair summarization of it.
And I noticed the pension on each state was a lot higher. How come the pensions jumped up so much on each?
The retirement rate goes up each year.
It went up
And it
a big
changes.
amount, like 25% or something.
I can look at the numbers again.
And I mean,
No.
that's in different categories.
Right, and I know that it does increase traditionally. It will increase each year, but we can look further.
Like under
Right.
health
May I
services,
Commissioner
Yeah.
Herbert, may I interrupt?
yeah,
Just, I've noticed with Mr. Golden listing page numbers, the numbers that I have in my book do not agree with his. So it might be easier for those of us that are listening to follow, if you could use the account number.
okay, I was
think
getting
we
ready
can
to
follow the
say that
account number. Thank you.
on these pensions, it was 520400. That's an example. It went up 24%. That's a lot.
Can you tell me which category you're looking at?
That was under health services. It went up to $49,025. But I noticed several of the different pensions under that they went up quite a bit. Well, some went down, some went up. Is that where y'all move people around somehow?
It depends on as people retire, as we have new hires, it depends on where they fall. And so there will be fluctuation between the accounts.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna ask another one. This is 539970 under regular instruction. It's page 1. It's OCSE courses. Is that online courses? It went up over 1,000%. Went from 15,000 to 180,000.
Yes, ma'am. That's an example of the cost for some of our online programs that jumped. And you're right. We had some pretty minimal e-courses, which were online courses prior to COVID, and so it went from a cost of about $15,000 to $180,000. We had a lot more students take those online courses.
Okay. Going to support, it's 59600. In-service training. It's page 6, but it's under instruction support. And it went up 118%. It went up to 83,000 for in-service training. What is that?
So Rachel, as I see here, it went up from a budgeted 38,000 to 83,000. As I sit here, I can't remember the specific reason for that, for additional training. Rachel, I don't know if you can add anything to that.
I'm sorry, tell me where you.
That's the bottom in the budget document. It's page 6. It's in instructional support. And the total document, the bottom right corner of the numbering system, it's page 23.
Okay.
In-service training. Commissioners, I see here, I can't answer the specific trainings for that. I apologize.
Okay.
Hey, excuse me, I just have to say I can't follow because y'all aren't using the numbers and I don't have the same page numbering system as Jason's referring to.
I apologize. I will tell you, our hard copies, if you picked up a hard copy, they did not have the numbers on them. The digital copy did.
Thank you all. I apologize for that.
I apologize for that for sure. But so if you're looking, 6 is probably the number.
If it's the book that Diane M did for you, it's page 6, Barbara.
Yeah. There's 2 numbers on that page.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah. So it's 6 of the general purpose budget. Is one way to look at it. So we're looking just at the budget. We can use that.
Okay, and what's the accounting code on the line?
In bold, we're talking about 72,210 instruction support.
Okay.
And then Commissioner Herbert was asking about a particular line item about halfway down from instruction support. which is 519,600.
Got it. Thank you.
And when you figure that out, can you email everybody's?
Yes, ma'am. We'll get you an answer for that.
Okay, I got another one. I know I told you I was gonna give you a lot. This is on page 7, under regular instruction, 572200. Regular instruction equipment, it went from 46,000 to 400,000. Is that computers or something, maybe? What is that? The next page.
So Rachel, have you found that?
I'm looking.
Very next page, second to last entry.
Oh, I found it there. I was looking for detail. I'm sorry. I'm looking for the answer.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
It looks like, based on what, in further detail, that there are some replacements coming through. Also, a lot of data equipment needs through the data team meetings. And then there is some equipment related to OLPs, the fine arts, chemistry, and the computer and science labs.
So a combination of replacing equipment this year, plus some specific equipment for online, on our online program for some of our more complex high school classes.
Correct.
So that does ring a bell. Chemistry lab items that where instruction has to be different for online.
Okay. The next one's under special education support. It's the same page. And it's under 72220, under 518700 overtime pay. You had none before, now you got 10,000 under special ed.
Yes, ma'am. We are anticipating, after having no need for overtime for special education teachers assistants, that we will need some overtime in next year. So we have added a $10,000 budget line for special education teachers assistants to fill in. What we have found is that there are some windows of time because of IEP meetings that we need some extra care from some of our teachers assistants, not the actual teachers. In the aggregate, it's a small amount. But what we're hoping to do is give a little bit of capacity for our special ed folks to cover those 15 to 30 minute gaps when a student isn't getting coverage in the traditional day.
I guess since they don't go more than 8 hours a day, I don't understand how the aides could work more than have overtime.
Well, the official workday is a 7.5 hour day. So it's listed in an overtime line, but the reality is you won't get time and a half unless you go over to your point, a full 8 hour day or a 40-hour week. But we have never budgeted for a full 8 hour day for teachers assistants. But what we found is there are moments in time where we do have those 15 to 30 minute increments here and there across the district.
Okay. All right, the next one's on page.
Back, and I can give you the answer where you were asking about the addition and in-service training.
Okay,
And
what is that?
It's related to an increased need for AP training for our AP teachers.
Okay.
So okay, thank you, Rachel. I couldn't remember that. Advanced placement, we're talking about the advanced placement training for our teachers.
Okay.
And that tends to, that's not necessarily an annual training for those teachers, but so that's part of the reason that tends to fluctuate.
Okay. The next is on page 9, under the Board of Education. You have got it's under 52310, and then it's under 518945. What's the supplements that you didn't have a chart for before? And it's over $8,000.
Judy, I think that's 8.5 million.
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah,
that's
not
the
that bad.
raise, because we haven't approved the raise. You guys have not actually
Okay,
approved
that's-
it to include that raise, so it's just sitting there as a holder account right now until
Okay.
that time comes, and then we'll move it.
So
Okay.
one of the things that Rachel and Leslie talked about was distributing that raise from one item that once the budget, if it passes for that, they will enter it into every item for the entire budget.
Okay, I think Leslie did that last year.
It includes the benefits, and so it's a bunch of lines, and so in case that
Yeah.
had to change, it's just easier to leave it there until we get further into the budget process.
And right under that, it's got the attorney. Why? It's got her raise on it. Why is she getting more than 6%? She's getting 6.19%. Why is that?
That's a great question. She has not been paid at the director level. She's been paid below the director level. So my proposal to the board was to take that position a half step up towards her peers. She's been paid below her peers.
Okay,
We're changing her from a title to a different title.
okay. And then right below that, it is legal services. Is that because you're needing an attorney outside of her for more court cases? It jumped up 25%. 25,000.
Yeah, so we actually have two potential legal services costs. One is special education that we contract out some of that litigation. As you all know, from time to time, we come to you in the middle of a budget year with the budget amendments because that's very difficult to predict. But we also will occasionally use the county attorney. And Rachel, if I'm not mistaken, I want to make sure that I don't misspeak. I think that's a extra budget item on the county attorney side, not special education.
I believe that is correct, yes.
Okay. All right.
And just to make sure you guys know, we won't spend that budget item unless there's a need, but we just anticipate that that's a possibility.
Okay, I'm getting close to the end. On page 11, under human services, under 72520, under 518900. Why did that jump up? So,
Other salaries and wages, human
are
services.
you hiring a new person in there or something?
Yeah, if you look at our PCR, if you look at our PCR position control report, that's one of the pain points. That's one of the pain points that we've experienced. So we are proposing in the Human Resources Department two additional HR specialist positions. So that does reflect that. Just to put it bluntly, they've been overwhelmed with work this year, and we need some extra help in that department.
Okay. What's the increase for the other contracted services in that same section? It went up 300%. It's under 539900.
Rachel, and that particular one went up from 22,000 to 88,500. As I'm sitting here, I can't remember that specific one. If you have any detail. Is that for Rachel? I'm going to ask a question. Is that for the potential that we may ask for additional help with consulting in our professional development?
It's a few things. Yes, that's part of it. It looks like they're also looking to pay for some additional training for the subs, licensing for the software that goes for our screening our volunteers. It's a lot. Drug testing for our employees. There's a whole. It's cumulatively higher.
Okay. I've got two more questions, Jason, and you'll be through with me. Okay, if you go to page 12, I noticed you got portables. Do we still have portables at some of the schools? And which schools do we have portables at?
Yes, ma'am, we do still have portables at schools. I'll make sure we send you a list. We maintain that list annually. And as you all know, that when we build a new school, we tend to return portables. But I can't remember off the top of my head. Mark Samuels, you're here. Do you have those portable numbers off the top of your head?
We have 4 at Longview Elementary School. We have 1 or 2 at College Grove Elementary School. I think it's 1.
We have 1 at Fairview Elementary.
No, sir, the Fairview Elementary one is gone.
Okay.
Spring Station has them.
Yes, Spring Station Middle School has 4.
Commissioner, we'll make sure we'll go ahead and send you that list. Send everybody that list just to make sure that we're clear with it. I will tell you, Longview is probably the best example right now, and that's our next proposal for some school relief with a school in the Spring Hill area that we're projecting to open in 2022.
Okay, my question is there a lot of bugs in the school or something? I see where pest control went up 32%.
Mark, I'll let you address that.
Fire ants is one thing that continues to grow, and that's one of the main issues there. Brown recluse spiders, we continually have to deal with those, and as we are adding more schools, that problem is getting worse as we go along. It's particularly, we go out in the playgrounds and we've got to have and play areas, and we're pretty aggressive on the fire ants in particular.
Okay, thank y'all. I appreciate the answers. I'm sure I'll find more next time, but that's all for today.
Thank you,
All right, thank
Commissioner
you.
Herbert. Chairman Tunnicliffe.
Yes, sir.
You have some of your committee members want to speak.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Story.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate all that you do to put this together. One quick point is, I know I'm still relatively new, 2.5 years into this, but I will say, as Commissioner Herbert said, the breakdown of the revenue was, as a matter of fact, I pulled it up from Ms. Holman last year when I was just kind of gauging when she sent it, and it's pretty detailed, and I think it then forecasts into the incoming years. So it was just a nice eye chart to look at, and kind of it helped gauge where some of those things. And the other thing is, the layout of this budget. Now that I'm looking at it, it's making a little more sense. It's just different. But I did also like how they laid out the prior years and how they compared to this year's budgeted request. So it just gives you a lot more opportunity to. It just, for me, it laid out better. But again, it's just new, so you kind of might learn to love it at some point. So that's just my 2 points. On that, from the standpoint of and Commissioner Herbert kind of hit on 90% of the items that I was looking at, because one of my biggest concerns that I shared in an email to you all was, the student enrollment is close to what it was around 3 years ago, and with the fact that we're not getting that extra $4 million from the state that we got at the 11th hour last year, The fact that we've got less students and we've got less teachers. And then I look at line items like, and I don't know if Commissioner Herbert went over this one, but, educational assistance under regular instruction, 516, 300 and 518,900 and 519,800. So it's the educational assistants, the other salaries and wages, and the non-certified substitute teachers. Is that geared more towards potential ongoing COVID related issues that you would need substitutes more now with less teachers?
Well, no, what we have found is that we were not able to fill enough substitute teacher positions. And that's actually been an ongoing issue that we've worked on solving. What we did do this year, and it actually predated COVID by just a little bit, I think, Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, is we created a position that we've called super subs. And it is substitute positions, 2 per building that we've put together for this year in this year's budget, where a substitute is committing to work up to, in essence, 80% of a full time where they don't have benefits. And we have increased the per day pay for substitutes to try to fill in that gap where we haven't had enough substitutes. We've had an ongoing issue really for a number of years with that, and we finally found something that our principals have said, this has made a difference. I've been able to get those super subs who we know are going to be in the building that day to go fill in where a teacher calls in late and can't make it. And so we believe that that's been we know that's been a significant help for our teachers so that they're not having to take their planning period to fill in, or students are unsupervised. And it's you've hit on a good point that that's a significant expense, but I believe it's going to help in the long run. But it's two per building, no benefits.
Yeah, and I think because we're dealing with we're still dealing with some the aftershocks of this past year, right? And
Yeah.
then B, the uncertainty of what next year looks like, and then how the potential requirement from the state to create an online school separate entity. How would that impact how this budget lays out?
Well, on the budget side, so let me give you guys a little bit of a description from what Commissioner Story mentioned. We have heard that the State Board of Education intends to modify what they've called the continuous learning plan rules to tell school systems that if you have someone full-time online, it has to be through an online school. They have a bunch of rules and regs governing online schools. We and many other districts across the state had a plan to continue the online program without creating an online school. I will tell you from a pure budgeting standpoint, that's a wash. We have budgeted for the staffing needed to do the online program, and we have budgeted with a plan for that to be a program. And so whether it's a school or not is not going to have a budget impact because we staffed for it appropriately. Where that could have an impact is on whether someone chooses to be online. If they, for example, say, you know what, I want to officially be a student at Independence High School, but be online. What we have heard is that in the next few months, there will likely be some state rules that make that a practical impossibility, and we actually have to have a declared separate school. Another example is the TSSAA rules had the potential to change, but currently, if you're at one school, then you can't play a sport for another school. And if you have a declared school, that's going to have an impact on them. But short version is, from a budgeting standpoint, with what we've added to make online work for us, and it's significant, y'all. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rachel, it's about 1.9 million more over last year to make online work. We're not going to need to come to you with any additional budget amendments based on what we've recently heard from the state board.
Yeah, and that was kind of my thing. I get a little better understanding, at least in terms of the numbers that you're talking about via the emails we've exchanged and then through the explanations. But I guess where I still kind of have trouble putting it all together, and then even to the point of, 412 million and some change, it might be a $16 million increase, but when you look at the increased budget throughout the year, the additional asks, which, that's historically not been the way I don't think we've looked at it in terms of, we've always looked at it from a approved budget to approved budget, and then the mid-year asks kind of never are mentioned. I haven't seen them mentioned as much, and so I think when you add that to the to the budget, it does draw that gap a little bit. But I just again go back to the point to where I think, as you said, last year was a zero increase budget, mainly because we thought the walls were going to cave in terms of economy and things like that. So, and I'm glad that after things leveled out and we saw revenues weren't hit as hard, or certain revenue items dropped, but other ones kind of took its place. That was a welcome addition. And then the state and federal, stuff that kind of comes to us to help us. That was a big help, but I still just can't quite get over the. I still can't get over the idea of, from 18-19 school year 18-19, we're pretty close to the staffing and enrollment numbers, within a few hundred here or there, and again, my math may be wrong, but that is from 18-19. That's close to a $20 million swing, is it not?
Well, Rachel, and you said 18-19. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't it 1920 that we went back to?
1920, that's right.
Yeah, I think Rachel misstated that. We had actually, it was a go back to the 1920, but I get what you're saying. And what we did know was that there were going to be some additional expenses, and we brought them to you. And I definitely respect what you're saying. And again, I want to make sure that you all know that the net staffing is down a little over 7 from the prior budget year. But if you look at our position control report, that PCR, there have been significant increases in special education, significant increases in online, and those are real increases. And I do know that if we, when we go through this over these next few years, as we continue to grow, we'll come to you, for growth positions for teachers. What I can tell you is that at the elementary level, we staff to the maximum pupil teacher ratio that the state allows. At the high school level, we don't do that because we try to focus on making sure those programs are available for our students. And I will tell you also, at some of our smaller schools, it's not quite that way because of the exact numbers, right? So if we look at it in the aggregate, we end up putting more positions in because we have to break it down, by our 49 schools. But I get what you're saying. And then the final item related to that is, we do have some specific positions in this position control report where it's become painfully obvious that we needed more help in particular spots. And so general ed teachers assistants, you asked about that. We are asking for 3 more We have 173.5 in this current budget. We're asking for 176.5. And it is for particular schools that, need that additional general education teacher's assistant. We've tried to be conservative, and I also want to let you all know that if we end up not needing a position, we're not going to fill it. And I hope that you have seen that that's the way I've done business. And online, I think, is a good example of that. We from a staffing standpoint, I've told you that we won't need to come back for a change based on what we've just heard that the state board intends to do. But likewise, if our numbers don't justify positions, we're not gonna add those. We have a staffing standard for every position in every school. For example, if there's 300 students, then you get one counselor. I'm tossing out an example of Rachel. It's maybe not quite right, but if you hit 750, you get an additional counselor. I know my numbers aren't quite right, but we're going to apply that same staffing standard to our online program and be as efficient as we can and still get the job done.
So are staffing standards changing at all this year?
We did have a small change to one of the staffing standards, and Rachel, I think actually the counselor was one. Can you speak to that?
Guidance counselors, we did, pulling that one back up so I can see. I know it's counselors.
And while you're pulling that up, Ms. Farmer, counselors, that makes a little sense with the craziness that's enduring and that we're having to endure, and the biggest issue with our kids, and this kind of goes into an aside of how I know everybody, and I've said this a million times, when you're dealing in unprecedented times, you don't really have a playbook to go by. You make the best decision you can with the information that you have, and you just hope that people realize that. But then at some point, we've got to look back and say, okay, here's the lessons learned, and here's how we can adjust. And I think I was talking to a school board member today, and we were going back and forth on the again, quarantining and what it means to be overly cautious. And I just think a lot of that is impacting the willingness for parents to send their kids into school, which is part of the reason why our numbers are kind of, I think, skewed. Some of it is just, there's precursor health issues that it's an option. And I think online school is a great option for situations like that. My biggest fear with online is if rules change, since we don't know what the rules are, if rules make it conducive to where kids can start going to school online, it opens up a little bit of a can of worms, and then it makes it even harder to manage, I think. And especially, again, if we're adding 7 APs to online, like you said, if it doesn't end up being needed, you may not add it, but it's, again, a line item, and APs make pretty decent salary. And at the end of the day, it's opening up a Pandora's box of especially to your point of you want to make sure it's the people who are online get the same quality of education in person. You might get some quality of education, but the social aspect, I think, would potentially hurt a great deal. And that's, and as the emails I sent to you all and shared with people who have yelled at me, the social, mental, physical, and emotional health of the students kind of have really taken a hit over the last year, one way or the other. And that's above, aside from the budget standpoint. But at the end of the day, I just, the online thing scares me a lot on, even if you think it's going to be a wash, that scares me a lot on how it might impact going forward.
Well, Commissioner, you've hit on so many points with that we've been, struggling with and agonizing over and planning for the last year or so. The quarantine's rough, and it's been hard to communicate that. We've had some people ask us, "Hey, don't give the health department any information about your contacts." And frankly, I've said I can't do that. I'm responsible for all our students, and I can't make that judgment that what the health authorities are asking for shouldn't be shared by us, and that's tough. The quarantines ate us up. I will tell you, we've gotten pretty good at it, and it's something I didn't want to ever be good at. In socially distancing our students as much as we possibly could. We're taking steps, and to your point, this isn't exactly budget, right? But when we have the opportunity to go back to quote unquote some normal steps, we're doing it. It's in fact, as of yesterday, we altered our mask requirement because of the health authorities' changes in some of what they're doing with allowing it more on the outside. We've opened up some of our elementary students' movement in the building, because because they've made some changes about what constitutes close contact. But on the budget side, on the online, we know that this budget gives us the capacity to put the quality we need. But I agree with you. I think the vast majority of our students will be better off and get a better instructional experience on campus. What we've been talking about was spending this year planning for a very specific, detailed online program, online school, and even talk about the full gamut of brainstorming. What we can and can't teach online. Would a hybrid be better for some students? Offer some combination. Strategically, like I said, we didn't plan on doing online, but it's here and it's not going away. In a lot of ways, it strikes me on the budget side, and Rachel, this may be an unfair parallel to how we're spending a little bit more per pupil at some of the smaller schools to make sure they get that same experience.
Yeah, thank you. Rachel, I'm sorry, I got long-winded there for a second. Did you find the
big change with the staffing standards is coming in, and is the commitment of having both a math and a literacy coach in each building. That was not necessarily in place before. Some had one or part of a 0.5 position, and so commitment wise, we're putting one math and one literacy coach in each building.
And so we've had system-wide coaches, and so we've been doing a tiered approach to that. And so we're I'm trying to remember, is it 6 more, 7 more, Rachel, something like that this year? From prior. Also, we are adding a strings program to Page High School and Middle School, so that's a 1.0, 0.5 at each school. So there are some small examples like that where we continue to try to improve our programming based on student need.
Good deal. As you saw my emails, I've got a load more, but I'm sure the rest of the commission has smarter questions than I do. So I appreciate your time. Thank you, Rachel. Again, thank you for. I know this is you've done it before, and this is the first time you've took the ball and run. So I appreciate all your effort. So thank you.
Well, one common thing that you all mentioned is the detail on the revenue side over and above the line item detail that we had. And we're going to make sure we try to get that. And I know Nina works on that as well for you all.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason, good evening. How you doing?
Doing good.
Good deal. I appreciate all the work that's been done on this and submitted over. Between Commissioner Story and Commissioner Herbert, they've touched on a lot of the same things, and I'm still having a hard time completely understanding kind of the overall strategy when it comes to online. So A couple of things. I'd like to start with the enrollment projection on that report. I know in the past we've had typically the capacity numbers are included on this report. Because in the past we're always dealing with building new brick and mortar schools. That's kind of the hot item, right? And so, I think we've gotten a little bit of reprieve from that with a reduced enrollment from COVID, but now the attention's turned to an online program. And if I understand correctly, the numbers for each of these schools that are listed also include online students. Is that correct?
At the moment, yes, that does include online students. We'll have to pull them out with what I anticipate is the information that the state board gave all the school systems, that within a few months they'll have a new rule for that being separate. And to your point, come this fall, that will inform us, and I think it has the potential to alter our 5-year capital.
Understood. I guess what I'm pointing and making is just as we like to itemize out the capacity for each of the schools, I think it's also important for us to know, what percentage of the student body in each of these schools is doing online versus being in class. Especially since we're considering potentially putting a significant amount of capital behind funding an online schooling program. So as I was looking through the PCR, the position control report, I understand. So it looks like we're 65 teachers below the budget or positions, regular or specialty teachers. And so over the past year, from previous conversations, my understanding has been you've had teachers either dedicate with a class in class or a teacher has been dedicated to a online class. Is that correct?
Well, so up to this year, we've only had online classes for high school. And so we've had a combination for those high school specialty areas, because the licensure for high school teachers is content area. So we've had a mix. We might have, let's say, an ELA teacher have enough sections to be teaching fully online. Because they can, fill up enough English 1, 2, 3, and 4 classes to be able to do that. Those have been pretty minimal. If I'm not mistaken, maybe 3 total teachers there, so that's pretty small. Then the other 2 have been more common up to this year, which is a high school teacher either works off a supplement and teaches a regular school day plus does 1 section of online as a supplement, which would be typically 1/7 of their salary. Because it's 1 additional period. And then there have been others who have worked a fractional job. Let's say they are, might be a 0.6 on campus and then a 0.4 teaching online sections. That's the model we've had up to this point. But when we hit the point where, like, across the state and across the nation, there was a flood towards online, we did have dedicated teachers at all grade levels. At the elementary level, it was exclusively dedicated online teachers. They taught those sections and it was synchronous. They were all teaching students at the same time, the direct conversations that we're having today. At the middle school level, it was a mix of what I described for the high school and then even more so at the high school. Because we could not hire so many of those specific content area positions because they're hard to fill, we had more teachers doing that extra for a supplement at the high school level this coming year. And that's what our staff is going through right now, given those who have registered for online, making sure that we minimize the staffing to meet the ratios, especially at the elementary level and at the middle school level, where they're actually live teachers, knowing that many of the high school courses, it's going to have to be kind of a mix of a schedule. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's long-winded.
It provides some backstory, but I guess, and I want to give you a chance to explain how you guys are envisioning the strategy in the administrative structure of an online school, because when we had 8,000 students last semester doing online, we've got 5,500 this semester doing online. You're projecting 1,200 online for next year, right? You've at various levels between the elementary, middle, and high school, you've had teachers either fully dedicated to online to a portion being dedicated online. right? And now we're going to build this administrative staff with 7 assistant principals and secretaries and a bunch of equipment and other support services to come in to support that with a dwindling online crowd, student population. It's not quite making sense to me at the moment why we would justify putting a tremendous amount of people and resources into that when it's a decreasing trend line from our student body. And so what I'm hoping is if we can maybe back up a second and give you a chance to maybe explain how you're structuring it, from an administrative perspective down to the teacher level, so that the numbers that we're looking at might make a little bit more sense, because right now they're not jiving for me. And I think it's probably the same for Commissioner Story, Commissioner Herbert.
Sure, that's a great question. So the state has a 1,500 max for an online school. We had 5,500 students in our online program this semester when we started the budgeting process. So what we budgeted for was for in essence, a K-8 school that was at or potentially above that capacity, and a high school that was potentially at or above that capacity. Since then, we've gone through the enrollment process, and we have learned that those numbers are going to be lower. So within this budget that the board approved, we had an administrative structure with, in essence, a principal at K-8, a principal at the high school, with the appropriate number of assistant principals to support the work based on the projected number that we had of that 5,500. With 1,200, I anticipate that we won't have that many assistant principals. And so like I mentioned earlier, we won't fill positions that don't fit our staffing standard. So to give you some specifics of that, but again, we budgeted without having the actual enrollment numbers. So to give you an example, at the middle school, our staffing standard calls for 2 assistant principals for a school of 800 to 1,000 students. The elementary school calls for 1 assistant principal up to 900. The high school staffing standard for assistant principals calls for 2 for 600 to 1,000 students, and 3 for 1,000 to 1,400, and 4 for 1,400 to 1,900. And then we evaluate it case by case. So we budgeted 7 assistant principals, projecting some of those numbers at the elementary through high school. If we don't have those numbers, we're not going to fill the positions.
Okay, and yeah, I understand that as well. And so my understanding then would be this online school would basically be treated as a completely separate school from the other current schools, correct?
That's what the state board has told us, that they're in the process of changing their rules to require that, yes. And so our proposal. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So the online students that would be, I would expect that you guys can itemize for each of the schools would be pulled out of those numbers and applied to an online school.
That's exactly right.
Is it okay? So I can understand current staffing standards for a brick and mortar school as we understand education today, right? Is it fair to go back and reevaluate those staffing standards for an online school, in the absence of a brick and mortar location?
I think that's a great question, and we did analyze it in that context, in essence, talking about what would these students need. Do they need a counselor? Do they need assistant principal? Do those teachers need the literacy coach, music, art, PE? Yes, there is value in that, and we have gone through that process. We have a number of staffing standards for items, especially at the high school level, that are really driven by programming. And so when it comes to that staffing, and from a programming perspective, the high school ought to be substantially less expensive, because we're not going to have all those career tech programs that individual schools have. The course choices are going to be more limited. But from those basics of meeting the state requirements for an online school, we will have counselors, et cetera. Yeah, if there's not a library, we may not need that. But so short answer to your question is yes, there's value in going through that.
Yeah,
But we have
that's
to,
all the
but we have
questions
to,
I had.
but we have to, yep, I'm sorry, but we have to meet the state minimums.
Right. In the absence of trying to go through every single line item again, but so in the budgeting process, assuming that a separate online school is formed, did we account for the reductions that those students, basically the operating cost of the brick and mortar schools associated with those students as well? So, from facility maintenance, just general wear and tear. I would imagine some staffing levels for teachers might go down if you're shifting 1,200 students out of the current population to online. Has that been properly budgeted for and reduced appropriately?
We're in the process of moving our human resources department, moving the staff to the appropriate place. Short answer is yes, and teacher staffing is by far the biggest number there. We are not going to overstaff any of our schools, so teachers will get assigned and removed from a particular school for online. And I will tell you, we did that this year, and there have been teachers who are hoping to get back to their regular school, but we needed to move to online because of the demand this year. We're not going to overstaff the teachers. And so we are going through that process of making sure that we meet those standards, meet that cap, meet that max at the elementary and middle school level, but make sure that the high schools are appropriately staffed so the courses that are needed for graduation are there.
Thank you, Jason. Mr. Chair, I don't have any more questions.
Commissioner Webb?
Does anyone, I have a question, but I want to say, does anyone else on the budget committee have a question on this section of the general purpose school fund? Commissioner Herbert.
It's me again. I just have a question as Chad was talking about this. Understand of the guidance personnel, you have to have so much according to the enrollment. But 11 social workers, and you're requesting one more. Where are you staffing the social workers at what schools?
Well, the social workers that's a great question. The social workers are regional, and so they're grade cluster work. And I will tell you what we often find is families who need that help and need that extra referral system have children, in different grade levels. And so we've had an increased need, and so we're asking to add one more to that number. And so they're not individual schools because we don't have anywhere near 49 of them.
Commissioner Herbert, any follow-up?
I couldn't get it unmuted. I guess so. You're just putting them in certain sections of the county one, and they get cases referred to them. I guess you'd call them cases, or students referred to them. Is that how it works?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. They have regional responsibilities, and then we do have we do make sure that if the volume in one particular area needs help, that that we do make sure that our staff kind of rallies to those areas. But they're basically high school zone based.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Golden, I've got a question. You had a lot of discussion about online school and the state requirement. I guess I'm thinking about, I believe it's in Union County, has an online school that people can enroll in. Is the state trying to push our students that want to go online to that commercial school?
That's
whatever term you want to use.
Commissioner, that's a great question. So give everybody a super short synopsis. Years ago, Union County opened an online school that was available to every student across the state of Tennessee. Union County's funding structure was that they had a disproportionate amount compared to us of state funding versus local funding. This budget, actually about 59% of the proposed funding comes from the county. Union had it skewed towards state funding. They actually contracted that out years ago to a private provider, and they got a flat amount per student, and then the private provider was paid the bulk of the funds to provide the actual program. Short answer to your question is, I have gotten nothing from the state related to that. What I understand is that that one of the state focus points is they want to make sure that that the online programs have that school structure, and that's the intro that they've given us. They just haven't gone through the process of nailing that down with the rules yet.
All right, but the bottom line, I think, is either we're going to pay for it and have the online schools, plural, in Williamson County, or we're going to pay for our students to go to another online school.
I got you. We could, there is that opportunity for our students to go elsewhere on online school. You're correct about that.
And I will say, thank you. My granddaughter did the virtual school, and the elementary kids, probably class size is too big where they have to, the teachers have to hold the first and second graders' hands when the computer crashes, et cetera. So I understand that from witnessing it, but I still think that was a good program for the time. So, Mr. Tunicle, I saw that Commissioner Story had a question, but he's taken that back. Is there anyone else on the budget committee that has a question?
Mr. Chairman, this is Rogers. I do have a question for Jason or for Rachel. I'm not going to get into the online. I think Judy and Chad and Matt have covered that. Jason, in the cover letter that Rachel put out under your name, you said the current BEP formula does not fund 736 of our educators and nurses, which is the part that we have to pick up 100%. So I did some digging since we met, and I don't like to surprise you, but the last time that we got a number for this was in the 1920 year, and I assumed it didn't change much last year. It was 587. So we've gone up 100 and nearly 50 non-funded BEP positions. Question, why has that changed?
That's a great.
Did the state change? Did the state for it? And then I've got two more questions, Paul.
Mr. Mayor, that's a great point. I had actually double checked that myself, and here's the difference. And I want to volunteer that if you'd like the old apples to apples version, I'll make sure we do that. The question that Leslie answered is teachers. The question that Rachel answered is instructional component of the BEP, which includes additional positions over and above teachers. And nurses are an example, and there's some other items in them. And then so we did give you, I guess, an apples to oranges comparison to prior years with that, but that's the instructional component number.
So to follow up on that, Jason, the sheet that I'm looking at was dated March 2019, does make reference to 587.7 educators / nurses.
Okay.
And so I've always used the figure of about 55,000 per. That's salary benefits on an average. It may be closer to 60. So when you look at that number for this year, that's $40 million. The Education Committee and the Budget Committee has to understand we're funding that the state's not sending us. $40 million based on that number of 736 times 55,000, which could be even higher. And it's always something since I've been around that number has just steadily increased. You saw it in the funding that the governor and the legislators funded their 2% on. They didn't pick up the non-BEP positions. You and I as taxpayers picked that up. And it's the right thing to do because we want to treat everyone fairly when it comes to pay raises across the board. But I do think it's important for all of us to understand that every year, as this number continues to grow, we get deeper and deeper. So my second question, Paul, to Rachel is, have you calculated what the state is paying per student to Williamson County this year?
I can get that number for you. It is a long calculation. We do not have the final money numbers yet that we're going to get through BEP, so it will not be an exact number until May. But I can give you, I'll be glad to provide you with a ballpark of what it looks like.
And would you say that our increase in education spending for this year is going to increase per student? And if so, what percentage?
Again, I will definitely calculate that for you. I can give you a projection.
I will say, Mr. Mayor, I do expect it will increase.
I think it will too, but I don't know to what extent.
So I think my final comment, Paul, is we can sit and beat this thing to death. It's 7 o'clock and I'm getting hungry. And I'm sure others are too. But, I think the schools have done a good job on their numbers and the way Rachel, I mean, there's some more data that Judy and Matt and Chad all want provided, and they can be done. When you look at their overall budget increase above what they asked for during the year, and in your book I found this out yesterday in talking to Rachel, behind one of your tabs, I'm not going to try to attempt which book you have, but one of those tabs gives you a breakdown of how the spending went this year, and it's pretty it's pretty telling how much throughout the year we've had to adjust. In my book, in the hard book, it was right behind section 4, just like the second page, and it's a reconciliation of the budget details, and you kind of go through there and see the net increased expenditures, just because that's what we're really trying to get to. But overall, I'm sure there's some tweaking we'll do, and as we get to the second and on, Mr. Chairman, but it's all going to be focused on online, and that's gone up, whether you like it or not. That's gone up, and the in-classroom has gone down. But I appreciate what you've done. The revenue side, as all of you know, I should tell you that come May of this year, the arrangements we had for 3 years ago, that revenue of sales, the increase of the sales tax goes back to the schools. That's about 11 or 12 million dollars that they'll see this year. And just like it goes back to the cities, but our 3-year commitment has now rolled off. But so they'll be seeing some of that. And we've asked Jason also, him and Rachel, to look at the adjustments in the insurance line in this year's budget rather than rolling it out next year. Once we get the new pennies from Brad, we'll be able to do some of this. As many of you know how that works, we can close ranks a little bit and get firmer numbers. But I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you go on and maybe I'm the only one. Hit your cafeteria fund, hit your extended school. Let's get approval. Those are pretty much cut and dry, and move on the way. That'd be my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rachel, the mayor brought up the point about the BEP funding. I'm just curious to know if you have that while you're doing your calculations. Is it 55? Is it 60? What's a good round number? I don't need an accurate number. It's 4 million. Like between 55 and 60 is 4,160,000. So that's real dollars. So I'd be curious to know. That's always a talking point when you go talk to the citizens, that how much the state is not paying. So that's good to know. Thank you. I see Commissioner Tunnicliffe. We have 2 members, Commissioner Williams and Commissioner Herbert. Want to speak?
Commissioner Williams?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of follow-up questions. Jason, from what you're hearing from the state, is online school going to be required for the school system to provide? or is that left to us to decide?
I do not anticipate they're going to require it. They're going to require following their online school rules if we do it. I've concluded, I've concluded we need to do it because of where we are now.
Okay, so then assuming we fund these positions, right, and we're projecting 1,200 next year, if that 1,200 decreases to 900, 600, at what point do we say that it's not worth it? And then what happens to the positions that have been funded at that point for those students online?
I anticipate that has a potential to be addressed by grade level. I will tell you from a strategic planning perspective, I'm not sure that we ever would have done elementary school. One of the reasons that I wanted to delay actually creating a school, even though the logistics of it are fairly simple with filing an application with the state, was because we do still have some families that I believe are fearful about COVID at the time they have to make a decision now, projecting out. If we determine that the instructional value isn't there, then there is the potential for us to eliminate grade levels, in which case we wouldn't staff it. I don't have a particular aggregate number for you, but I anticipate I'm just almost 100% sure, super close to 100%, that we will, from this point forward, have an online high school. I'm very curious about how next year goes with the younger grades to determine if it's viable for us. My ballpark answer is if it fits the numbers of one of our small schools, then it's still appropriate to have, but I can't give you a specific number.
Understood. Thank you.
Commissioner Herbert.
Rachel, I'm just asking, can you please send me and the other commissioners the answers to the questions that Mayor Anderson asked also?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, Ms. Herbert, one of the questions that the mayor asked us a day or two ago was, do we have an approximation of the percentage of total teachers that we have that aren't being funded by the state? And Mayor, that's around 23%. We did the math on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Sturgeon.
That's pitiful.
Sorry, it's getting loud in here. Jason, if you don't mind me asking, you said you're just super, super sure we're going to have an online high school. Can I ask why you're so super sure? And are you saying like forever? Or are you saying this year?
Well, strategic. So I anticipate that that's here to stay. We had a lot of high school courses even up to this point. What we know is there are a lot of colleges that are doing that, and it's increased even more. And so the demand is up. The quality is up, and I just anticipate that long term that's going to be a change in our society, that there'll be a demand for it. We have those schools among some of our peers that they've had for a number of years. We had it in our strategic plan to do, but we were taking what I thought were appropriate baby steps, and we had to leap this year. But we've done a lot of the preliminary work, and I just anticipate that from now on, there's probably always going to be a demand given the large district that we are.
Okay, well, I'm struggling to understand why online is so expensive for us to do. I mean, and I'm wondering what are the duties of an assistant principal that we would need 7 of them? In addition, when we were going from 5,500 down to 12, I mean, I know maybe you guys covered it, but I wasn't able to follow your logic on how that worked.
Yeah, the planning supports, the scheduling, the demands for time have been substantially larger for students who are online. Commissioner Webb alluded to one example, the technology issues. Observations of teachers to make sure we do it right and maintain that high quality. It takes more effort. it's more difficult to schedule things than it is to just, pop your head into a particular classroom. To follow up with students takes more effort. You can't just do it in moments in time. You have to schedule items. When you're online, you have to schedule time. We have found that it is a significantly greater time consumer. Now, on the other side of that coin, student discipline has a potential to be less. You still have some misbehaviors online, but you're not walking into the cafeteria to manage that. But the net is a substantially greater time demand. Might that settle over the course of a few years? That's possible. But for now, for budgeting purposes, we know that there's a great demand.
Okay. Even though we're going down to 25% the number of students.
Well, we're still focusing on the ratio, so we're not gonna overstaff based on our staffing ratios.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
Commissioner Story?
Trying to find all my unmute buttons. So yeah, again, part of the issue that I see is, and again, we're talking about hypotheticals, but again, that's kind of what we're trying to flesh out here. But if you create a system that has to be logically separate from our current system, does that mean you can't, is the school board still overseeing that portion and all the resources like, Schoology and, Skyward and all that stuff? Is that a shared resource that can be shared across the two systems, or is that two separate instances?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Commissioner. It would be a WCS school, so it would be under the responsibility of the school board and under my supervision. It would not be a separate school district. It would still be a school. It would show up. They would get another number from the state for tracking purposes, for attendance purposes. In that sense, it would be no different than when we open a new school for growth.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, instead of, like, I think you had 3 sections here. You may be a, staffing, or not 3 sections, however many, extended school program, cafeteria, and then online. It would be its own kind of budgeting breakout with its own set of line items.
Well, it would be in the general budget. It would be in this general budget we're discussing. It would not be a separate fourth budget. It would be incorporated into the general budget.
Gotcha.
And the teachers would still show up in the aggregate numbers, et cetera.
Okay. I guess that my biggest issue with that is we can't, value of the dollar spent. It, to me, would be a little hard to separate to where, at some point I could see where traditional schools might wind up getting money taken away, or the entire budget would have to fight harder if, as you were stating, the online presence, the anticipation is you are still having the same level of excellence that we've really been known here in this county. We've worked hard to get. And so if that falls short, always the answer is to throw more money at it. And that's kind of what happens with government. And that's where we take wrong turns, is hoping that if we throw money at it, it'll increase the outcome. And that doesn't necessarily jive a lot of times. And I guess that would be my biggest fear. And I would really hope, if the state says you must do this, I would rather the line items be somewhat separated to where we can validate the cost of the program, the outcome of the program, and the value overall. Because again, good intentions are one thing, and hard, cold hard consequences are another. And I would just much rather see those spread out to where we can see again, the outcomes of the dollars being spent.
I get what you're saying, and I agree. I think there is a point at which there's an economies of scale question. You all may recall 11 years ago, Pinewood Elementary School closed. One big reason for that was they were down to 13 kindergarten students, and at the time, 12 of them were boys that particular year. And it just, there was a determination that that was a tipping point where, even though it was a large geographic area, it just didn't make instructional sense to continue it. And those of you who experienced that, that was a very painful process that some of my predecessors went through. But I agree with you that we'll have to keep an eye on that regularly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tunnicliffe, are you ready to move on to the general cafeteria funds? And if so, we can move on.
I am. I do see one more request to speak.
That's me still blinking, but I'm done. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Please move on, Commissioner Webb.
Mr. Golden or Rachel, you want to talk to us about central cafeteria this year and talk about the $2 million transfer while you're discussing it, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have proposed for you the Central Cafeteria Fund. As you know, that is what we call an enterprise fund that needs to be self-supporting. COVID did have an impact on that this year. What we did to make sure we could maintain the viability of this program was in the previous year's budget, knowing that when the governor actually closed schools, we actually took some of the federal money to address the pay for those individuals. That was for last year. In this current year's budget, because especially last fall, we had students in and out, largely because of quarantines. Our food service department had netted a loss. Rachel and her staff and Leslie, before she retired, did some projections and some evaluation. And I had a conversation with our food service director where I told him that because you have had a good, strong, viable program up to COVID hitting, we do not, and I do not intend to recommend to our board that we spend any more federal money in this particular budget year to address any losses, but that you instead will need to make sure that your enterprise fund takes care of itself. And if we have to support it, that you commit to paying that money back. So a couple of months ago, the finance department went through the board and ultimately to you all. We obtained approval for up to $2 million from the general fund to support the net loss revenue, to make sure we complied with the federal requirements for that fund, with the agreement that whatever they used would ultimately be paid back to the general fund. So this particular budget, Rachel has, includes our projections for income and income and expenses for the food service, with the anticipation that any net gain is put towards whatever we end up spending. At this moment, there has been no spending to send to that particular fund, although we've been approved for up to $2 million. Rachel has a projection for what she anticipates, and I would like for her to share that.
We are still, this March will be a good month to look at. We're still waiting for those numbers to come in to get a full feel. What we do anticipate, if we projected based on February and what we saw there, we're anticipating maybe $1 million of that money needing to be transferred to the cafeteria fund. And so we're also, if you look at the past history and those funds, we do feel like that when students are in school and are paying for lunches, then the revenue will come in and it will be able to be paid back, hopefully sooner rather than later. But we do think that maybe half of what we asked for the commitment, that we'll be able to provide for them.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, add a little bit to that. The USDA this year has been reimbursing 100% for every lunch that is purchased So our families have not been paying for lunch, but we've instead gotten the reimbursements from the USDA. We have traditionally not gotten a lot of federal money for our program because it's largely based on free and reduced lunch numbers. Most of our revenue has come from our families paying. We also have a la carte, which is traditionally a big profit maker for us, where students choose individual items rather than the full school lunch. And so this particular year has been a special anomaly for us. Our food service department has traditionally operated at a budget surplus. The federal rules require them to have no more than is it 3-month, Rachel, no more than a 3-month fund balance at the end of the year? Not no less than, but no more than. In other words, they have to spend down to the 3-month. Traditionally, our food service department has done a lot of capital work with that fund that we don't spend general money on, and so we anticipate that excess gap is going to be put towards paying this back.
Thank you. Anyone on the Budget Committee have a question regarding the Central Cafeteria Fund? Chairman Tunnicliffe?
I'm sorry, my dog was barking, hence why I was on mute. I apologize.
Turn this over to you for the central budget.
We just, there's Mr. Story with a question.
Yeah, quick one if I can, if I'm unmuted everywhere. Again, from being these are federal funds, they aren't going to be VEPized, are they? Correct? We'll get the full potential fund coming to us and it won't be kind of stripped back.
Correct. It is an
okay.
allocation that goes straight to food services. It's based on the USDA.
Yeah, I'm coining BEPized as a term for
It's a USDA rate that they have, they have been paying throughout this school year.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Rogers. I'll move for approval on the cafeteria budget.
I didn't think we were doing any votes today. We didn't take a vote on the general purpose school fund. Did we need to take a vote on that?
I don't know that you're ready for it. You've got a lot of questions, but the Central Cafeteria Fund and the after school program funds, they're both pretty self-funding, and I'm just trying to move it along, but if we don't get a second, the education doesn't want to do it, that's fine. But there's not going to be a lot change in either one of these two after looking at it.
All right, thank you. I do have a second from Commissioner Herbert. And so we'll, under this, let's see, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Chairman Tunnicliffe, do you want to offer a motion or have your committee offer a motion to approve the Central Cafeteria Fund?
May I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
I do. You may tell me more, but the $600 for insurance has not been allocated yet to Central Cafeteria employees or the extended school care employees. So that expenditure is not in either one of these.
That might make a difference.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, we will be able to amend that because there's actually no expenditure proposed from the county commission, and we can amend those particular enterprise budgets separately at a later date.
Mr. Chairman, I took that into consideration that Rachel hadn't had a chance to get her school board approval on it, but she knows that that's coming for both of those funds. And when that's approved for the $600, then she'll spread it across the full board. Across all the funds. So I took that in consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Tunnicliffe, back to you.
Yeah, we have a motion from Commissioner Bethler. Do I have a second from Mr. Story, Mr. Williams? I do have a second. So we have a motion and a second as well.
So I think when both committees are ready to vote, if I understand this, they'll load us up and we'll vote yes or no.
I can find my voting app. Here it is.
Mayor Anderson, will you vote, please? Thank you. All right. Mr. Tunnicliff, it looks like they're all in. Can we record the vote?
I think we should.
Okay. Budget approves.
Commissioner Webb, would you state the vote?
The vote is unanimous for the Budget Committee.
And it
5-0, thank you.
and it's unanimous for education, except for those absent of Commissioner Hudson, Commissioner Beal, and Commissioner Hester.
This is Commissioner Hester. I vote yes. My open meeting is not cooperating.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair Tunnicliff. Are we ready to move on to the school program?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Golden, you and Ms. Farmer want to give us a quick summary on the extended school program, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Extended School Program, what we call SAC, the School Age Child Care Program, is our next enterprise fund budget that is before you. We do have some proposed increases in tuition fees to make sure we have a balanced budget. I will tell you also, to a much lesser degree than food service, this SAC program suffered similarly as a result of COVID, largely because of fall and parents making different decisions for child care. So we actually did vote for a smaller amount of funds to come from general fund to take care of that. This SAC program is at every single one of our elementary schools, and so we presented a budget for this coming year, and we do recommend your approval.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for the Budget Committee? All right, seeing none, Commissioner Chairman Tunnicliff.
Any questions from education?
I'll entertain a motion for approval. Mayor Anderson makes a motion to approve the extended school program. I need a second from the Budget Committee first, Mr. Story. Thank you. I have a second from Commissioner Herbert. Chairman Tunnicliff.
May I get a motion from education, please? And a second. Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Bethel? I believe we're ready to vote.
I think we are. If you're in favor of the extended school program, please push your yes button. If you're opposed, your no button. Commissioner Hester, I think you have to vote.
Yes. Commissioner Hester votes yes. Thank you.
All right, let's record the vote, please. Budget Committee votes unanimously, 5-0 in favor of the extended care school program.
And education votes unanimously from those that are present. Commissioner Hudson and Commissioner Beal being absent.
Thank you. Do we have any other business, Chairman Tunnicliff? If not, I would love to entertain a motion for adjournment of the Budget and Education Committee.
Let's entertain that motion.
Budget Committee motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Herbert. I'll second that. Budget Committee is adjourned.
Education Committee motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Bethel. And Ms. Hester, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Tunnicliff. We survived.
Thank you, Chairman Webb. Good night.
Thank you all.